Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan Ennis. This is Ukraine War Frontline update for the 13th of March 2024. This will be a relatively quick Frontline update. Famous last words, I know. One of any of my videos being relatively quick. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, then please check out this map key at the moment. I'm just bringing up onto your screens. There you go. Pause the video if you don't know. Right, let's go to, well, actually we're going to go to the northern borders, somewhere different to start the video off with, where JR has updated the map with some useful yellow pins to show where the Russian, pro-Ukrainian Russian units have been attacking across the border. So we can see there's some activity up here in Kursk at a place called Tetkino here. Just unsure whether they are still there. I talked this morning about the really useful geography of the area. So Tetkino is itself surrounded by, it's sort of in if this was the Russians attacking the Ukrainians, it would be a salient into Ukrainian territory here, but actually it's just the way the borders go. But not only that, Tetkino is bordered by a river to its north, effectively, and obviously to the south and to the east and west, really, are the Ukrainian borders. And so if the Russians were to try and take Tetkino back, if it was indeed properly controlled by this unit, then they might have to go into Ukrainian territory and thus incur the wrath of genuine Ukrainian soldiers. So there really is only one option, and that's to go in from the north, sort of northeast there. So it's quite difficult to try and take that back. However, it really does depend how much this was a raid and how much it was an actual genuine attempt to take territory. I just don't know. So who knows whether the Russian unit still controls, a pro-Ukrainian Russian unit still controls Tetkino. I'm completely unsure. If we look at Nela Reports, that has a really useful thread on everything that's taken place today, we can see that it's been active in a number of these areas. A joint statement from the Freedom Russia Legion, Russian Volunteer Corps and Siberian Battalion appeals to residents of Belgorod, urging them to evacuate due to alleged attacks by Putin's forces from the city. The statement accuses Russian forces of targeting peaceful Ukrainian cities from Belgorod, resulting in civilian casualties. The groups claim that claim to be forced to retaliate against military positions in Belgorod and also Kursk. They emphasize the need for civilians to leave immediately and call on local authorities to initiate evacuations in Belgorod and Kursk to prevent further harm to the civilian population. Okay, then there's lots of footage that's come out. Russian BMP being destroyed in Gorkovsky here in Belgorod. So if we come out from the Kursk Oblast here and move down to Belgorod, near Grivoron here, there's another village called Gorkovsky, which is just there, near to another place where the Russians have, the pro-Ukrainian Russians have been active. So in this village, there is claim that a Russian BMP-1 has been destroyed. Whether that's from artillery, from a distance, from within Ukrainian borders, I don't know, or whether that's from troops from that Freedom of Russia Legion operating. Here we have two Russian BMP-2s destroyed by FPV operators of the Freedom of Russia Legion, so they are using the FPV drones effectively in the area. And then there's footage coming out again from Nekotivka, which is the checkpoint where the Ukrainians, or the pro-Ukrainian Russians, lost the tank to a mine. Actually, it does seem to have been a mine, even though it's on the road effectively. I don't know what sort of mine, what trigger it was, but lots of activity around there. Then Alexei Baranovsky, a volunteer of the Freedom of Russia Legion, told Newsweek that the rebel fighters intend to eventually march on Moscow. Of course, that's rather grandiose. The goal, he said, is the ensuing liberation of Russia from Putin. We may not be able to pull it off now, but that is our overarching mission. And then a destroyed Russian BRM-1K armoured vehicle, again in a village of Gorkovsky. It could well be a different vehicle from the one just labelled, published by the Siberian Battalion engaged in fighting in the border area there. So who knows where these units are at the moment, where they are still inside Russian territory. As you can see, a number of places. Here we have Kozinka, and then further along to near Gorkivsky, where we just were, and a place just over the border from Sotnitsky, Kozachok there, and then further along to this is where the border checkpoint was, where they lost the pro-Ukrainian Russians lost the T-62 Nekotivka, and then further to the east towards Novaya Tavozhanka and the area south of there. So potentially doing some great stuff, or potentially not even in Russia at the moment. Who knows? Obviously, it's going to be used propagandistically by both sides. This is mentioned by Surrey Maps. It says today, and I think Surrey Maps got it wrong yesterday when they made those big claims that they were completely repelled, the Russians, and then says, so instead of saying I was wrong about them being repelled, they sold it as a new attack today. So today, Russian militias supported by Ukrainian army have again launched new attacks on the border. Of course, there was video footage of them there from the point where Surrey Maps said they'd been repelled. So they just don't accept their mistakes. Launch new attacks on the border. At the moment, there is nothing confirmed about the success of the militants. However, it's necessary to re-emphasize the propagandistic use of that is circulating in the networks as a video of the Free Russian Army troops in Tetkino, when in fact it is the neighboring Rizhivka across the border, or the following video of a drone attack on Russian forces that several accounts on social networks have interpreted as a ground breakthrough. Of course, as mentioned, that may well have been FPV drones operating from within Ukraine. So there's a genuine, and also, if some of the footage from Tetkino was in fact not from Tetkino but from across the border, then that is indeed relevant. But as mentioned, this is going to be used propagandistically by both sides. I don't know where the pro-Ukrainian Russian troops are at the moment, but it is certainly something. These are occasions where the Russians are under a little bit of pressure and losing some equipment as well. So who knows how it will develop going forward. Moving on to the rest of the front line, you can see that there is not a lot going on. There's not a lot. Well, I don't mean not a lot going on. It's probably very testy along the entirety of the front line, but there is no confirmed map changes according to the three mapping sources that I use and JR uses. So what is very interesting here is I reported that Zelensky said, well, the Russian counteroffensive has been halted. And then I said, well, that's interesting. I mean, it might be a little bit overrated, but it's certainly slowed down. Some people were calling me out, some pro-Russian trolls on the thread calling me out saying, well, at least you don't believe that Zelensky's telling the truth because, you're being quite guided in your comments is the implication. But actually, I don't really know for sure, but it's definitely slowed down and to some intents and purposes halted. I mean, there's no big breakthroughs going on, it seems, at the moment, but doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But if Zelensky said we've halted the Russian counteroffensive or offensive, and if we are pretty sure that there is quite a fair bit of artillery ammunition getting through at the moment, and if reinforcements are being delivered to some areas, then it could be that things are settling down. I mean, that's what the evidence suggests. But I still think that the Russians will be trying to grind out advances in all the key areas we've been looking at: Kupiansk, Terny, Torska, to the west of Crimea, Avdiivka, particularly at Ivanivska. Interestingly, not really anywhere else. Bakhmut, Ivanivska, not really anywhere else around there because the Russians have been pushed back a little bit in Bodanivka and don't seem to be doing anything around Klishchiivka or Andriivka. So again, that kind of feeds into this idea that they might not be able to be pushing further forward in many places. Avdiivka, west of Avdiivka, it stopped there today, although obviously it's fairly dynamic there. Now, where there are changes is in Pervomaisky area. Surat Maps, again, only coming from one mapper though. Surat Maps saying the Russian made new advances at Pervomaisky, taking control over a big part of the plantations east of Novoavdiivsky Pond and the urban area beyond Persho-Trevnevka substation. So that's in this area just south of these ponds here. They do seem to be closing off that Ukrainian, or at least a grey zone here where Ukrainians still must be present, coming down from the north here, but also pushing from the east. But again, that is both of those claims are only really from Syriac maps. There are some marginal gains from Andrew Perpetua in that area, but recently, but not as much Syriac map. So who knows exactly what's going on there? We'll probably find out soon. Andrew Perpetua admits there are some gains to the east of Novelska, but not Novelska itself. Now, this is very significant. Syriac maps has the Russians taking control over Novelska, that small agricultural settlement that is to the south of Pervomaisky, and was the part of the reason why the Ukrainians were able to hold out so long around there. Now, it might well have fallen. No one else is confirming that, and I think that's really significant. If it has fallen, it's well fortified, and the Russians have been. The Ukrainians have held on to that for an awful long time. The Russians have been unable to take Novelska. That has the same kind of importance, or at least had the same kind of importance as Pobjeda did to Marinka. The thing is, Marinka has fallen, and Pervomaisky is close to falling, right? And the larger Avdiivka salient has fallen to the Russians. And so Novelska fails to be as important now as it previously was. But it's a shame to lose that position, because it probably means that all of this area will be filled in by the Russians if it has indeed been lost. So that's something to definitely watch out for. That's all that's really happened today in terms of map changes. But I think that one little bit there, I'm not so concerned about the others, but Novelska itself falling does, I think, smart a little bit for me, just because I've seen that as an important place previously. But no changes to the Marinka areas, or Krasnohorivka or Novomykhailivka, Shevchenko by Vuhledar, Velika Novosilka, Robotina, and Krinky. Nothing to suggest there's been any changes to any of those frontline areas. So that's, I think, really good news for the Ukrainians, Novelski notwithstanding. And if they can continue to cause the Russians some issues with those pro-Ukrainian Russian troops to the north, then that will be useful for the Ukrainians as well. So no news on a lot of the front line is good news for the Ukrainians. That much is for sure. Anyway, hopefully that's of some interest to you. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate all your support. Take care, and speak to you very soon. Thanks so much to all the members.